Welcome to the 39th Annual Yom HaShoah Holocaust Remembrance Program. I appreciate Mayor Ginther, Council President Hardin, and all of the elected officials and distinguished guests for joining us here today. Today, we ensure that we will never forget the horrors of the Holocaust. I appreciate each of you for dedicating this time to reflect on the lessons of the past and to consider how these lessons can guide us moving forward. Now, please stand for the presentation of colors from the Columbus Division of Fire Honor Color Guard. They, followed by the Jewish War Veterans and Council Member Nancy Day Acauer, will then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Forward, march. Colors. Halt. Left face. Present. Arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Prepare to post the colors. Ready? Post. Recover. Right face. Forward, march.
Welcome to the 39th Annual City of Columbus Holocaust Remembrance Program. My name is Rita Epler, and I will be serving as the Master of Ceremonies today. We are grateful to have the opportunity, under the auspices of Mayor Andrew Ginther, to gather together in the City of Columbus to observe these days of remembrance and honor the memory of those who have perished in the Holocaust. This program is sponsored by the City of Columbus, Mayor Ginther, the Department of Neighborhoods, the Columbus City Council in cooperation with Jewish Columbus, and its Holocaust Education Committee. We would like to recognize a number of other distinguished members of our community that are present here today. City Council President Shannon Hardin, City Council members Nancy Day Acauer and Rob Dorans, also Eric Brown, former Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court. Thank you all for your continued support and your attendance here today. Thank you also to Carla Williams Scott, Director of the Department of Neighborhoods. In addition, we recognize the Columbus chapter of Jewish War Veterans, Steve Seekin, and Herb Greff. From Jewish Columbus, we would like to acknowledge the President and CEO, Julie Tilson Stanley, Chair of the Board, Liz Safran, Co-Chair of Jewish Community Relations Council, Dr. Jonathan Feibel, Senior Director of Community Relations, Justin Shaw, and Manager of Israel and Community Relations, Lauren Nemirovsky. And of course, our thanks to the survivors who are present here with us today, both in person and virtually. This Holocaust, oh, please be seated. I'm sorry. I just saw that everybody was still standing. My apologies. Okay. This Holocaust Remembrance Program is in large part about educating the next generation to be a more tolerant people and to remain ever vigilant in standing against hate. We therefore recognize the students present today that represent a variety of schools from around Central Ohio. We have students today present from Crystal Ray Columbus High School, Dublin Kaufman High School, Arts and College Preparatory Academy, and the Focus Learning Academy. And now it is my pleasure to call upon Columbus City Council President Shannon Hardin to share with us a few words of welcome.
Thank you, Judge. It is a solemn privilege to be with you today as we observe Yom HaShoah and remember the atrocities of the Holocaust. I want to join the judge in recognizing and thanking the mayor and the Department of Neighborhoods for once again bringing us together as a community so that we will not forget. I want to thank my colleagues, Councilmember Nancy Day Alkire and Council President Pro Tem Rob Dorans for being here, and to the amazing team at Jewish Columbus. Thank you for all your support and guidance. To Ms. Renee Friedman, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. And to the survivors and the families of victims in attendance today and who are viewing. It's also, I think, one of the most important parts, as Judge Ebler said, is that we have young people here. We will inevitably reach the point where we won't have living survivors. And it will be so important to have the voices of the young people to continue to tell this story so that we never forget. For many, the Holocaust has already been relegated to history, and some people already probably wonder why we need to learn about it now. I'm sure many of our students here in the audience today might be asking these very questions, and as we work through our program today, I hope the answers will become so evidently clear. While they are still here, we have a solemn duty to learn from those that came before us, to hear their stories, and to keep their memories of those who we lost alive. Soon, the burden will be on us to tell those stories. When it comes time for you, our students, to be leaders, there will be no survivors. You will need to tell the stories to your students, to children, to your community about what you hear today, about what you learn in your classes. So I hope you take advantage of this opportunity and start to grapple with what we know. It is never easy, but it is so important. I, like so many of you, am deeply troubled by the alarming rise of anti-Semitism across the world. The words "never again" cannot be an idle phrase, but must be an active commitment. Anti-Semitism is not something that only happened in the past or in faraway places. Unfortunately, bigotry is alive and well, and we all know of several incidents of anti-Semitism that have taken place here in our own community. I know that it is so easy to turn on the news and be overwhelmed by the stories of pain and suffering from around the country and around the world, and sometimes even at City Hall. But what I believe is that here in Columbus, our commitment is tolerant, compassionate, and committed to peace. In spite of those attempting to divide or inflame, we have our neighbors and our fellow Americans whether Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, or any other faith. It is commitment and solidarity that makes us strong. So when we remember those who came before us, their memory lives on and becomes a blessing for future generations. So thank you all for joining us here today as we remember.
Thank you, Council President Hardin. And now it is my pleasure to call upon the Mayor of the City of Columbus, Andrew Ginther, to share with us a few words of greeting.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Judge, and thank you all for joining us here today on a very solemn pause in our daily lives where we all come together, folks from all walks of life, to acknowledge the atrocities of the Holocaust, to remember and to share their stories. I want to thank Jewish Columbus, Columbus City Council, the Department of Neighborhoods, of course, Judge Epler, our MC. I want to thank and welcome all the assembled faith leaders, elected officials, and distinguished guests who are gathered here today. Honored to be here in the presence of men and women whose lives are a testament to the power and endurance of humanity. The inspiring survivors are some of the darkest chapters in human history. I'm very proud that for more than 30 years, Columbus has come together to mourn the atrocities and loss of life during the Holocaust. And for over 30 years, we've celebrated the survivors and rescuers who risked their own lives and oftentimes the lives of their families to save others, to build a brighter future. This observance is not just a lesson in history, but a lesson in selflessness, courage, faith, and compassion. It's also a vivid reminder that we must remain vigilant in protecting and defending the rights and dignity we hold so dear. We must always acknowledge the horrors of the Holocaust, denounce the depravity of the Nazis, and speak up and speak out against the relentless scourge of anti-Semitism. We cannot, and we will not, stand idly by while our Jewish neighbors, our brothers and sisters, are once again attacked and targeted for their faith, their culture, their community. It is incumbent upon each of us, particularly friends, allies, supporters, to stand up and push back against any ignorant and despicable attempt to ignore, to deny, to distort, or revise history. It is our shared responsibility to pass down through the ages the truth, clarity, and knowledge that we've gleaned from our past. We must ensure that history never, ever repeats itself. And we must ensure that evil is never again granted the freedom to flourish. By lifting up the stories of those who survived, we will strengthen our collective ability to remember, to take action, and to celebrate the enduring strength, spirit, and resilience of the Jewish people. I ask all the young people to stand up, every young person in the room. No matter your age, if you think you're young, you can stand up. But these young people that are here today in particular, I want you to be present and focused as we are here today. This is not a field trip. And I'd ask each and every one of you to repeat after me. I promise to speak truth, and to share their stories. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, for being here today and for your continuing to support this significant annual Holocaust Remembrance Program. The events and circumstances that led up to the Holocaust were both simple and complex. The destruction of a people does not occur overnight or without warning. Rather, it is a process that separates and dehumanizes a people until they are, in fact, dehumanized. The Holocaust was a systematic process from discrimination to isolation from society, the stripping of civil and human rights, and ultimately resulted in genocide. The world was not completely unaware of these developments. Sadly, as Elie Wiesel stated, the world did not believe, and the world stood silent. As atrocities have continued in the aftermath of the Holocaust, we are called to recall, memorialize, and bear witness to their stories, to learn from them, and to work to prevent the repetition of these atrocities. Collectively, as a society, and each one of us as an individual bears this responsibility. And as stated by Elie Wiesel, to remain silent and indifferent is the greatest sin of all. Therefore, we are here today to remember, and our presence here serves as our testimony that we will not be silent. Today, we bear witness to testimony from our guest speaker, Renee Friedman. In hearing her story, we ensure that as a community, we will steadfastly stand against hate and promise never to forget the lessons of history. Renee and her family escaped from Germany just days before Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, which was a series of attacks against Jewish persons and property by Nazis in Germany and Austria on the night of November 9th, 1938. Years after settling in Dayton, Renee met and married Anshel, or Charlie Friedman, a Polish Jew whose entire family had been killed in the Nazi concentration camps. Anshel spent the war escaping from Nazi slave labor camps, hiding and eluding Germans for years. He ended up in the forests of Poland, fighting for freedom as a partisan. As the founder of the Dayton Holocaust Resource Center, Renee remains an active educator, emphasizing the harm that comes from racism and bullying. She speaks to groups from around the country. She is also the author of Anshel's story, Determined to Survive, which chronicles the heroic life of her late husband as a teenager in Poland. Renee is here to share her story of survival, as well as that of her late husband, Anshel, and to discuss how she continues dedicating her life to remembering the Holocaust as a scholar, writer, and storyteller. Please welcome Renee Friedman. Move that down a little bit for you. Yeah, I think you could hold it.
No,
Is that good? Or you
that's
want-
okay. Almost good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank the color guard of firemen and some of our veterans. I want to thank all the survivors who are here. I want to thank Mr. Mayor and all the other officials that are here. And I want to thank the young people who take time from school, I know that's hard to do, and came here to this beautiful building to hear something that maybe you don't hear every day. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. I am a survivor, although I was extremely young when it occurred. And survivors are known to be people who either survived the war in Europe and lived through everything, or people like myself who were fortunate to get out just in time, any time after 1933, when the Nazi Party, notice, was voted into power in Germany. And that triggered Adolf Hitler to make himself dictator. And then it was all just, one thing after another, one bad thing after another. So I'm going to start a little bit with my life, as it was and as it is. Because I do this not just to tell my story and my late husband's. I speak to young people, school children, school students, and college students, and many other places continuously. And that's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We've all done that. School children and people of all sorts, of all nations, of all colors, of all religious backgrounds. Because I think there's a message. Some people don't like to say there are lessons, but there are lessons. If we don't learn from history, what are we going to learn from? So I'm going to start here. I see, I can look there. That is my grandfather, Max May, who was an artist in Frankfurt, Germany. My grandmother on the other page, Lydia, who is prominent in the story. And in the middle is my mother, Carmen, who was 10 years old on that picture. Now, my grandfather is wearing a uniform. It happens to be the uniform of the German army because that's where he was born. That's where both sides of my family lived for centuries. Literally, it's documented. So that's what, how that starts. Then there is next, that's a picture of my parents' wedding. And that happened 10 days after the Nazi Party was voted into power. Now, both sets of my grandparents are on that picture, and some of my aunts and uncles. As I'll tell you the story, some of them did not make it out of Europe, unfortunately. And then the next picture is of the apartment house that I lived in for a very short time in my life in Frankfurt, Germany. Now, you may or may not know that Anne Frank was also born in Frankfurt, Germany. Her family left and went to Holland a few years later. And had Anne Frank lived, she would have been 6 years older than I. She would have been a great writer. Obviously, her diary has been translated into almost every language in the world. So that picture on your left is the picture of the house as I found it in my parents' albums. And the other one was taken by a very good friend of mine when she went back many years after the war with her husband. She took a picture of that house. Now, it happened to be the only one that had remained standing through the war, because not only did the Jews suffer because of Hitler's atrocities, but the German people did, who were in those buildings that were bombed, in the churches and all the other places in Germany and then throughout Europe. One person can do a lot of harm. Okay, next. Well, I've got to go backwards a little bit, but it's okay. My grandfather, who was a soldier in the First World War, when the laws were passed against the Jews in Germany, one of the first things that happened is all the Jews lost their citizenship. But they took it one step further. They took away the citizenship from the men who had fought in the First World War from that country. Imagine, as you are among people who have fought for us in the military. My grandfather got very angry about that. Both my grandfathers served in the First World War. My other grandfather thought when things started to get worse that things would get better. So you see the opposite two sides. This grandfather, Max, decided that he probably should leave Germany and get to the United States as early and quickly as he could. And then I was told that what really made him decide to leave was that someone dropped a rock from that building that you saw on my baby carriage, and although I wasn't injured, I was the only grandchild. My grandfather decided that he absolutely had to go to America and make a new life for me, and thank goodness he did. He's my hero. So he got the papers from cousins in New York. However, they only sent the papers for one person. They didn't ask if he had a family, and maybe they didn't want to know at that time. And my grandmother that you saw in that first picture let him go. Now, in many cases, the family did not want the father or someone else in the family to leave them in dangerous circumstances and come here. And it wasn't all that easy. I don't want to go through all the steps you had to take. But those of you who have a passport, and you'll see mine in a moment, you know you need a passport. You also needed there was a quota system from the United States. Remember this, only 10% of that quota was ever filled. Many more people could have come. And then, this was the hard part, you need an affidavit, a signature on a piece of paper, a very long piece of paper, that said that when you got here, you would not be a burden on the United States for 5 years. This was after the Great Depression. People were not standing in line to bring people, either family or strangers, over here. But the truth is that when people come here, mostly, I won't make a blanket statement, from another country, they work hard because they want to make a living for their families. They work very hard in many cases. So, my grandfather came to New York himself. He got a job in an art factory that produced art subjects, and he got to paint again. But the cousins that brought him here went to an office to sign for my grandmother, my parents, and myself. And they were told, you don't earn enough a week to sign for more people. So my grandfather in New York City alone spent for a year and a half to find a person who would sign the papers. And meanwhile, things were getting worse and worse in Germany, and especially in Frankfurt. My father's business was taken away, and you could barely leave your apartment for fear of being taken away. Well, he finally found someone who would sign those papers, that gentleman that you see up here with, with his wife. His name was Eugene Rich, my second hero, who actually, my grandfather found him through someone else. He was a stranger, and my grandfather begged him to sign the papers, and he agreed to do it. He agreed to do it. And that was a lesson that many years later, when I understood what he did, that I take with me and I say to all of you, everyone sitting in this room, no matter what your age, you can be a person who makes a difference. And believe me, in this day and age, we need you to make a difference. Even in a small way, you young people you have the opportunities to make a difference. You can help someone that needs help. You can open a door. You can seek out a person in your school who is sort of alienated. Maybe smile at them, talk to them. Help an older neighbor, respect your grandparents. We'll talk about that later. But all the things, we need a kinder, more respectful country, world. We need that desperately. And you can be a person who reaches out and does that. For older people, if you went to a college, you might want to write a letter right now to your college president, because the head of Yad Vashem, the main Holocaust museum in the world in Jerusalem, the head of that museum wrote to the head of Columbia University a very strong letter about being a leader and helping things to get better. All right, so we're going to go on to myself and my mother on the balcony of that apartment house, and then me, another couple pictures, I was already giving speeches with my little finger there. My mother and I, with my grandmother and my great-grandmother, 4 generations. I have 4 generations here today by coincidence, which I'll tell you about later. My great-grandmother did not manage to get out of Nazi Germany, although my parents tried desperately to get her out, and my other grandparents finally consenting to leave, and the papers kept going back and forth across the ocean. No, they're not notarized. No, the president of the bank signed the papers, but that wasn't good enough. You need it notarized. And finally, the doors of Europe shut tight, and no one could get out. Barely no one could get out after that. And so, okay, we're going to go to this. That is my immigration card from Nazi Germany, and it has my picture on it. And next you will see something that you will not see many of, ever. That's my passport from Nazi Germany to this country. And the thing about it is, it was a children's passport, not much different from an adult passport. And on your left-hand side, there is a red letter J, and I think you all know what that stood for. What that meant was, not only that Germany wanted to dignify your passport with that, but Switzerland, that we thought was so neutral, also did not want Jews stopping over there to live. And the important thing is that I had a passport. That was fortunate. I would have been one of the 1.5 million Jewish children that were killed if I didn't have that passport and those papers to get me out. But on the other side, you see a swastika in a circle with an eagle with the circle, with the swastika. I just want to say something real quickly about it. The swastika is a sign of pure evil, certainly to any survivor, and it should be to everyone. In Germany, if you have one in your possession and you're found with it, you can be arrested. Here, it should never, I'm speaking to young people, never be on a piece of paper. It should never be on a building, heaven forbid. It should never. Okay, so that's me at the age of 8. I want to tell you something I thought of last night. I remembered sitting in a classroom in my public school. You'll see a picture of that. Not me sitting there, but school. And sitting in a classroom at the 4th grade in a public school where the entire class was taken out to go to the church across the street. And I was the only child left sitting in that classroom. And my teacher was glaring at me because she could have had a free day, or at least a couple hours, if I wasn't sitting in that classroom in front of her, the one of 5 Jews out of 1,000 kids in my school. And some of the things that happened to me at that school, E.J. Brown, which has been torn down and then rebuilt to the same proportions it was before. But the thing is that I suffered isn't really the word. I experienced anti-Semitism growing up in that school. And so it gave me the knowledge of what it feels like to have people call you names or to chase you home from school. I became one of the fastest runners in the school because I was chased home, which was a mile from the school, quite a bit. But by the 7th and 8th grade, some of those people became my friends. And some of those people are still my friends today in a reunion committee. And we went to a different church every week in the 8th grade from something that we ourselves decided to do. That wasn't put up by anyone. We just decided. And they came to my synagogue. And so I will tell you 2 things. One is that it's okay to be friends with somebody who's different. You can learn a lot from it. It does not take away from who you are. It does not need to take away from who you are. Because they read to us from the New Testament after we did the pledge to the flag, as we did this morning. We said the Lord's Prayer every day, and they read to us from the New Testament. And you know what? I learned a lot from that. And when I went to Israel, I knew the Christian holy places as well as I knew the Jewish holy places. To this day, I'm thankful, in a way, for that education. But I did have a hard time for a long time. But I will tell you that I hope no one in this room calls someone names. Not always because of the religion, not always because of ethnic background, but sometimes because you're taller, shorter, fatter, thinner, wear glasses. If you've had that happen, you know it doesn't feel good. So those of you who think about doing it, don't do it. And please don't do it on the internet or on your phone. Don't shame someone or tell untruths about anyone because you have the phone to do it with. Because that person may be so hurt that it ends badly. I believe very strongly in that. Because what happened is if I was called names, I went home, I had a nice little apartment, and my parents were good people. And so I could get over it for the day. But when you have something going on the internet, it keeps going and going and going, and that's the danger of it. It can be a very, very good thing. It can be a very harmful thing also. So we go past this, and those were my grandparents on my father's side, Bernard and the other lady, Frida, and who my one daughter has the middle name of Faye. Faye. My children were all named after people who had passed away in the Holocaust, at least one name or the other. Many people who are second generation had the same thing, and third generation even, because we want to remember those that we lost in a good way, because it means that there's life going on. So, next. I'm going to go to my late husband's story briefly. There is a book. We have some here. He was a teenager in Poland, in a small town, and those were his parents, Hannah and Chaim Yosef, which my older son's named Joel after him. And there, they were taken away, the father, very early after the Nazis moved into Poland. It happened very fast. They went through city by city, arresting first the men, and then taking the rest of the population from their small city to a bigger city in ghettos. Ghettos means someplace that you're locked in, you can't get out of. And his mother was 30, and his father was 31. They were beautiful people. He was left alone at the age of 13. His mother saved his life by getting him on a truck that was taking young people for slave labor, and because she was headed to the train station, and although she didn't know what the end of that would be, she sensed that she had to save one of her children. And of course, he being the oldest, 13 and a half, or 13, would be the one that she tried to save and take the two younger girls with her. So he was on this truck to go to a place to work. However, being who he was, his name was Anshul, that was his birth name, Anshul. He jumped off the truck when it went over a bridge not far from his hometown, and he knew, maybe instinctively, there was a man with a gun, a rifle on the truck, and there were maybe 100 young people on that truck, and he couldn't take a chance to follow this young kid who was running off when he had to watch all the other people. So Anshul ran and hid in a cemetery for a day and a half, and then his progressive survival starts. From one place to the other, from one place to the other. It's documented in the book. But I'll just tell you briefly that he had He went to a Polish farmer that his family knew and wanted to ask him, please, to hide him. And he did hide him in the barn. And he couldn't tell his son that this young man was hiding in the barn because he would be taken away by the Nazis that were occupying his country. So anyway, there's a lot of escapes. And did we show the factory? Yeah. Backwards, we showed the factory. There, that's it. That's the crux of the story. That was called a munitions factory, the only one in Poland, and it was in a small town called Pianki in Poland. I heard my late husband often speak about Pianki, but until I was doing the book, I didn't really realize that it was so large. And when he got there on another truck from another place, he realized, he said to himself, this is not going to be so easy to escape from, even though he had escaped from a lot of places. And so it had barbed wire 7 times around the camp, and it was on the edge of the great forest of Poland that went for hundreds of miles. And so eventually he worked there for a while, and then he had agreed to go and escape with 6 other young men. But he was called to work with the Germans somewhere, and so he stayed with that person because he had to. The 6 young men got out, but they were a little bit, and they got caught, and the next morning they were all hung. And you know what? He's still determined that he was going to escape. I think that's one of the miraculous things about his sense, his feelings, that he sensed things. And he eventually, of course, escaped into the forest for 3 years, where he lived in the forest. Now, that was not like camping out. He only had what he had on his back. Think about it. If you've gone camping, you know you have supplies, you have food, you have clothing, whatever you want to take. He had nothing. And eventually he found his way to a small group of partisans, or people who were fighting the Germans in the forests of Poland. And he lived with them. In the heat of summer, in the cold of winter, they lived there. And the only way they had food was sometimes what they got from the forest. He said mushrooms or berries or things like that, or going to one of the farms on the edges of the forest, where they sent him first ahead. He didn't really look Jewish. He was blonde, he was ruddy-faced, he spoke perfect Polish, and he went into these farms to look around and see were there any Germans, was there food to be had, and then the other young men came, usually at night, always at night, because the Germans were afraid to be in the forest at night, and they got what they needed. That sign that you just saw was his hometown, Jeglinsk, and it was close to Radom, a bigger town. That's his cousin from Brazil, which we went to visit many, many years into our marriage. That family got to Brazil early. A couple of them got later to Brazil. And so the next picture, I think, is, we didn't see the family picture. Oh, we did? Okay, I wanted to stop for that real quick because I'm going to get carried off here in a minute. That picture we found in Brazil at Cousins when we went to visit. And the second man on your left was his father. Now, that is the only picture of his father in the whole world that he ever could find. And so, with his arms folded, everyone on that picture, including the 2 children, were killed during the Holocaust. So we had the picture, the small picture. He carried a picture of his mother with him throughout the war. These are things that you can't imagine, but maybe you can, because pictures are so important to people. And if you don't have it, you lose your sense of the person in a way. And he was very much a lone person, but yet he managed to do what he had to do. He was not afraid. He was very, very smart, and he managed to survive. So, when the war was over, he was liberated from the forest in January of 1945. and eventually went back to his hometown where he stayed a short time with some other young men. And then they got a note. The war was over. This note was from some of the Polish citizens that said, if you don't get out, you'll be killed. And they knew that was probably true. So he ended up in Germany, which is where a lot of the survivors went at the end of the war, because Jewish organizations were helping them at that point. That couple who lived in Dayton, Ohio, saw Anshul's name on a Red Cross list, and they asked him to come to Dayton. It took a while until he decided to come. And after he came in October 1950, a few months later, I met him at a wedding of survivors. I was in my teens. He was in his 20s. My parents let me go out with him. And the story ends this way. We have 4 children. They're all here, by the way. And the extended family is here. There are 4 generations of us here. You heard the little one's voice. Addison is number 16 of my great-grandchildren. And that's survival. Yeah, that's the last picture of. By the time he got to the United States, he decided he wanted to be more American, so he gave himself the name of Charlie Friedman. That's the last picture of us taken before he died suddenly in September of 2004. That was hard. That was hard, but you know, inside of all of us, I had learned some survival from him, but inside of all of us is the essence of the human spirit that we can find when we need to sometimes. Trauma meets all of us sometimes in our life, and we can't compare trauma because for that person that it happens to, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. And so I would tell you that find your spirit, your human spirit. Be kinder, be more respectful, reach out to people. Spread love if you can. And I will tell you that I am most honored to be here today and privileged. And I wish you all health, happiness, and peace. Thank you very much.
The experiences of the Holocaust and of those who survived Nazi persecution are in danger of becoming distant memories. We are privileged to bear witness to your story today and to honor the memory of your family. Thank you. Now, to honor the memory of the 6 million Jews that were murdered by Nazis during the Holocaust, Rabbi Lynette Goldman, Associate Rabbi and Director of Education at Temple Beth Shalom and President of the Columbus Board of Rabbis, will present 6 survivors to light candles. The survivors are joining us virtually through the partnership with Jewish Family Services. Hopefully we'll have the screens up for that momentarily. In addition to the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust, there were also 5 million other individuals murdered by the Nazis, including trade unionists, people with disabilities, homosexuals, Romani, and Christians. There were also non-Jews who, despite the grave risk to their own lives, were willing to shelter Jews that were being hunted by the Nazis. Rabbi Goldman will present 5 representatives to light candles in memory of the 5 million individuals murdered by Nazis during the Holocaust. We begin our candle lighting ceremony with the song Eli Eli, written by Hannah Senesh and performed by Gail Rose, who was a cantorial soloist and music director at Temple Beth Shalom. Hannah Senesh was a young woman from Hungary who moved to Israel and then volunteered to return to Europe to save Jewish lives. She parachuted into Yugoslavia, went to Hungary, and was discovered by the Nazis and executed. She was known for her heroism and her poetry. Cantor Gail Rose will sing Eli, Eli. Eli, Eli, shelo v'yigmar le'olam, hachov v'chayam, rishu shel hamayim, barak hashamayim, tefillat adam, hachov v'chayam, rishu shel hamayim, barak hashamayim, tefillat ha'adam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayers of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. I'd like to first invite Linda Zielinski to light the first candle. Next, I call upon Asiya Grinberg and Yeva Kobrina to light the second candle. I'll now invite Fred Meyer to light the third candle.
All right, I'll now invite Boris Urin to light the fourth candle. I'll call upon Millia Lifshitz to light the fifth candle. I'll now invite Maya Schneider to light the sixth candle. We may have missed someone, so if I missed Fred Meyer again, if he can light that final candle. And here I'll invite Council President Shannon Hardin to light the seventh candle. We'll now invite Robert Hunter to light the ninth candle. We'll invite Councilmember Rob Dorrance to light the eighth candle. We'll invite Johnny Oak to light the next candle. I'll invite Steve Seaskin to light the 11th candle. And I'll invite Reverend Marianne Sifke to light the final candle, please.
Dear friends, as a Lutheran pastor, it is an honor to be here today. And also as a Lutheran pastor, I ask your forgiveness for our silence in the past. Words from German Lutheran pastor Reverend Martin Niemöller. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
Rabbi Goldman will now chant El Molei Rachamim.
El Malei Rachamim is a memorial prayer traditionally recited during funerals and memorial services, and it usually includes the deceased person's Hebrew name. So this is a special version for Yom HaShoah for all 6 million Jews who died during the Holocaust. I'd like to invite you, if you are able to, please rise. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmot Shisha Million Achenu V'achotenu Shenehergu Al Kiddush Hashem Balarachamim Yastirem Beseter Kenefav Leolamim Vitzor Bitzrachayim Et Nishmatam Adonai Hu Nachalatam V'yanuchu Bashalom Al Mishkavam V'nomar Amen. Fully compassionate God on high, may the souls of the 6 million Jews, our brothers and sisters, men and women, boys and girls, children and babies, murdered because they were Jews, grant clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the brace of your wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, our God, they are yours. May they rest in peace and inspire us to create a more whole world. And let us say together, Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you, Rabbi Goldman, Reverend Zifke, and our candlelighters. We would also like to offer our sincere thanks to those who have provided support and contributed to make this program possible, including Gail Gray of the Columbus Department of Neighborhoods, Debbie Sugarman, Chair of the Holocaust Education Committee at Jewish Columbus, Justin Shaw and Lauren Nemeriski of Jewish Columbus, and Sandy Hackman. Special thanks to all the schools, teachers, and administrators who continue to educate about the Holocaust and help facilitate the students' participation here today. We can never take for granted the moral compass of our society. We must strive personally, as a city, and as a nation, never to lose this moral compass. The experience of the Holocaust teaches us that we must be continually vigilant in this regard. It is particularly fitting in today's world to reflect on the potential for each one of us to make a difference. Thank you all for being here for today's program, and if you would all rise one more time, please, as we hear taps performed by Battalion Chief Michael Verda of the Columbus Division of Fire. Thank you, and that concludes our program today.